Hi there, it's Kevin with the Rogue Market here with another top 10 list of cards that you could potentially invest in surrounding Rienne, Angel of Rebirth from Core 2020 for the Commander format. Now, let me just give a disclaimer. I'm not too hot on this card as I don't think that it is going to be as popular as I once thought when I saw the spoiler, and that's due to me trying to actually brew a deck around this card. It actually feels quite weak in comparison to Kaikar or some of the other commanders that have come out recently like Urza, so I think this one is going to be overshadowed by those particular commanders. However, this card is very unique with its ability to return multicolored creatures back to their hand after they die, and it should be interesting enough for people to brew specific decks that these cards particularly go in. So the difference between Kaikar and Rienne is Kaikar is all over the place. You can justify running artifacts, you can justify running cantrips like a feather-based deck, or even instants or sorceries with cards like Gutter Snipe, or even go a token-based strategy. However, this one is a little more straightforward with cards that can go in the deck, and I was quite surprised at the lack of cards that actually synergize with the Angel of Rebirth. So let's just pull up MTGO and I'll show you what I'm talking about. There aren't a lot of multicolored cards in Naya that have enter the battlefield effects or cascade effects or sacrifice effects to get the value off of the Angel of Rebirth. So these are my honorable mentions here, and then we'll get the top 10 cards that I think synergize the most, and also the cards that I like the price point the most. So first of all, there's cards like Ravager Worm that are pretty recent out of Ravnica Allegiance. I think decks will want cards like Ravager Worm. This one's a good one with having the right, be able to give it haste or a +1 counter, and then having to either fight or destroy a land with an activated ability. I think this is pretty decent for Commander, destroying those pesky lands with activated abilities. However, this card is just too recent for it to have a price increase just due to this Commander. Keep your eye on it nonetheless. I put Glass of the Guild Pact in that exact same category. I think that most decks are going to want to have this go big type strategy with a bunch of multicolored creatures, and Glass of the Guild Pact is an artifact that gives multicolored creatures +1/+1. Omnath, Locus of Rage is another one that I think will go in the deck. However, this isn't unique enough for this commander. Most of the cards that I've picked for this top 10 list are specific to this commander. Omnath goes in so many different EDH decks at this time that it's, again, this is more of a thematic thing. I'm trying to make it so picking cards that specifically go in the Angel of Rebirth. This isn't one of those cards. Then we have cards that have Cascade. Both the Enlisted Worm and Bloodbraid Elf seem interesting, but I don't know if people are going to go the Cascade route. I particularly like the difference between going back in the battlefield and going back in the hand. It means that Cascade actually works. So personally, I would include cards like Enlisted Worm and Bloodbraid Elf. However, I can see people ignoring them, and for that reason, I don't think that either of them are going to bump up in price due to this commander. Then there are cards like Harmonic Sliver that have recently gone up in value just due to slivers in general. This went from about $1.50 all the way up to $6, and I highly doubt that the Angel of Rebirth is going to spike this any more than it already has. Then we have the Lord type effects with like the Wiltleaf Liege, the Baleful Liege, or the Balefire Liege, and the Boartusk Liege. Again, these go in a lot of different multicolored commanders or their particular color combinations. I think that many decks will actually run these, but I'm not sure this is going to be a card that goes in every one of these particular decks. We don't know how people are going to build these. I particularly want to go a value-based strategy rather than go like a smash-based strategy, but I'm thinking many people will see that +1/+0 effect of all multicolored cards and say, okay, I'll just throw all the lieges in there, and then all my creatures just become bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah, I think that there will be a number of those, but I'm not sold on these cards going up due to that. All right, then we have the Ulash, the Hate Seed. This one's kind of a weak effect, but it is a card that does synergize. So it enters the battlefield with a +1 counter for each other red or green creature you control, and you then can remove +1 counters to deal damage to a creature or create a 1/1 Saproling creature token. This just seems kind of weak. I don't know if every deck will want this. It is a multicolored card with an ETB effect and kind of a sacrifice effect, though, so I thought I'd mention it nonetheless. So anyway, what are the cards that I came up with? Here are my top 10 list of cards that I think synergize the most and have the most potential of going up. The first one is Tome of the Guild Pact. Now, this card is incredibly low, and it was out of Ravnica Allegiance, so the supply is quite high for this card, but I think that most decks will want this card. Whenever you cast a multicolored spell, you draw a card, and you add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. So it's a mana rock and a draw in one. This deck requires a lot of mana, so having access to mana rocks, especially one with a draw effect, is exactly what this deck wants. I think when people will be building this deck, they will be putting this card in the deck. I also like the price point. I think this is the lowest this card is going to be. This is definitely not a bulk rare. Card Kingdom is classifying as a bulk rare, but this actually does see quite a bit of play in many different commander-based decks, and even some Oathbreaker decks, a lot of casual decks, and I think this is going to be a card that's going to have decent value in the long term. Like, you can tell it's already hit its bottom. It's not going back down any lower. According to TCG Mid, it's not quite bulk price, so it means there is movement, and I think this trajectory will start to go up regardless of recent commanders, and just any potential future commanders can definitely bump up the price. So it's pretty decent for the foils at the $149 mark as well. I think if I were to target one of them, it definitely would be the foils. Next up, we have the Cazale Pride Mage. This one was recently reprinted in the Commander 2017. However, that's getting old enough where I think this card will potentially be able to go back up in value. It also dropped because it lost a lot of its share in Modern. This used to be a very popular Modern deck, especially when there was a lot of Celestia-based decks or Hate Bears-based decks, or even the Black-Green Rocks used to be Abzan. They'd throw Cazale Pride Mages in the sideboards as a very good way to get rid of artifacts or enchantments. But unfortunately, right now, even Zoo isn't quick enough for Modern, and so a card like Cazale Pride Mage just doesn't seem to make the cut in a lot of Modern-based decks, or just hasn't really been able to be impactful. However, Commander, it is a classic, so any Celestia deck is going to be running this, and I think this card synergizes perfectly with Angel of Rebirth because it does have that sacrifice-based effect of destroying an artifact or enchantment. So it's a nice rinse and repeat that you can keep getting this card back and keep destroying your opponent's artifacts or enchantments. Next up, we have the Urza's Filter. Now, this one has recently spiked up in value, but being out of invasions, this is a very low supply card, and this is just another commander that is very greedy as far as mana is concerned and wants ways to reduce the mana. When you're having multiple creatures die per turn and then trying to cast them the next turn, well, you need to reduce the mana cost. That's Urza's Filter. I expect this card to get a bump just from the supply of the Angel of Rebirth decks, or the demand from them outstretching the supply. Next up, we have Knight of New Lara. This is another one where I like the price point. The difference between this and the Lieges are already more expensive. This one is basically around that bulk rare price, but the most interesting about this is look at the Card Kingdom spread. So Card Kingdom is selling these for $2.49. They're offering to buy them for 85 cents. The TCG market price is about $1. Mid is about 95 cents. So that means this card's actually going up more than what this graph is showing. So I think this is a pretty good pickup right now with the Knight of New Lara. It's going to start bumping up. And I don't know if it's particularly because of this deck that it's bumping up, or just many other multicolored cards that have come out in the past year. However, I think this is a good pickup regardless. Next up, we have the Tulsa Wolfblood. This came out of the Guilds of Ravnica guild kits. The supply of these were actually lower than people anticipated. It gives all their green creatures and other white creatures +1/+1 and creates a 2/2 green and white wolf creature token. So if people are going that multicolored Lord Liege type deal, they probably will be running the Tulsa Wolfblood. Again, I like this because of its price point, just Ravnica, and then in the guild kits, I think it's probably a pretty smart pickup for this particular card. Next up, we have an uncommon out of Apocalypse. This is Dragon Arch. So speaking of reducing the cost of how much this deck needs to pump out mana-wise, this for 2 and tap allows you to put a multicolored creature card from your hand into play. The synergy with this deck is when it dies and goes back to your hand at the beginning of next end step, then you can cheat this into play on your opponent's turn. So there are a couple cards you can get even more value out of it per round with Dragon Arch. So card was already starting to go up in value. It had a price spike not too long ago. Let's just refresh this and we'll show you. I don't know why sometimes Goldfish doesn't get the whole. There we go. They had a price spike back when the last multicolored commanders were printed, and I think it's due for another price spike for the Dragon Arch. Very popular card in the EDH format. Next up, we have a really synergistic card specifically for this deck, and this is Dragonroodmother. I talked about cards wanting to enter the battlefield, talked about them wanting to have like Cascade or Sacrifice. Well, this card allows you to eat your cards. So at the beginning of each upkeep, you put a 1/1 red and green dragon creature token with flying and Devour 2 into play. And so it's both red and green, so it can get the plus from the commander, and it also allows you to eat those ETB effects to go back to the hand to recast. So I think that these type of decks will want them. It hasn't really gone anywhere for the past few years. It had a price spike clear back during Fate Reforged, and I think that was just with Dragons coming out, and it's been flat since then. So I think that from Lara Reborn, this is a card that's due for another bump in price, just of the scarcity of this card. Again, popular card in Commander, popular card in Casual. It's each upkeep you put a 1/1 red and green dragon creature token into play and then Devour. So you can get a lot of value off of this particular card. All right, so now we're on to the Loxodon Hierarch. This is one that I like because of the price point. It was also printed in the guild kit, so that's where you want to actually target these, is in the guild kits. They're about a quarter a piece, very, very bulky. However, if this deck does get some steam, I think this is a good pickup. It does everything the deck wants to do. You gain 4 life when it enters the battlefield, and you can sacrifice to regenerate each creature. So, been in a dual deck, been in a guild kit, so if this is too poor for your blood, I understand. I kind of like these penny stocks when they double up or when they do start to gain popularity. They actually seem quite easy to move. And if, like I said, if this deck does get any sort of steam, this is a nice little trade fodder pickup that you can get in for very, very low. You can see the TC market price is 15 cents. No one else is buying it at the moment. So I do. I like these type of cards that when they finally find that home. I don't think there's been a commander that has been as lucrative as this particular one. Eventually, we're going to get an elephant commander as well in the future. They always seem to do that. All right, so on to the next one, which is the Dauntless Escort. This is another one that has a recent reprint in Commander 2016, but it's about time it goes back up. This occasionally sees play in like Elves in Modern and Hate Bears occasionally, or some sort of the combo-based, creature-based decks. You can sacrifice it to creatures you control, gain indestructible until end of turn. It's a great Court of Calling target for Modern. However, in this deck, again, it's a way to protect everything against board wipes and then recast it the next turn. Protect, recast, protect. So basically, your opponent has to use 2 board wipes, or 2 opponents in a row have to use board wipes for them to get rid of your board. So the go wide strategies, the go big strategies, I think you're going to want this card. The price point is very, very attractive for the Dauntless Escort. Last but not least, we have Safies Daughter. This is a card that hasn't gone up in quite some time, and this is actually surprising because this card is a classic in Commander. So if you don't know the combination with the Safies Daughter, this is combos with the Pattern of Rebirth and Boonweaver Giant. So Boonweaver Giant goes and gets Pattern Rebirth, and then you're able to, I think you have to get a few other pieces like Revel Arc, but it starts the chain. So you get to sacrifice it, and when target creature is put in your graveyard from play, return that card to play. So you need to sack outlay with the Boonweaver Giant. You sacrifice it, and then Safies Daughter then gets back Boonweaver Giant, that gets back Pattern Rebirth, but then gets back, goes and digs out something in your deck, and then that gets back Safi. You sack the Boonweaver, and you just have to keep doing this until you finally find the loop of cards that chain. So if you're looking for that combination, just Google Boonweaver Giant and Pattern Rebirth, and we'll show you that particular combo. And all the decks do run the Eric's Daughter. So that sort of combination is viable in this deck, Pattern Rebirth, Boonweaver. It's Naya, so there you go. So I'm actually expecting a bunch of the decks to be trying to go that route. I actually have a reserve list commander that's pretty garbage. Then it's just one of those like kind of bait and switch type decks. So you sit down at a table and they read your commander like, yeah, that's pretty terrible. And then it's actually just more of a combo deck. So you could definitely build with an upside with the Angel of Rebirth, being able to get back cards like Safies Daughter and have these really mean combos that exist in your deck. However, even if you don't go that route, this is perfect for the Angel of Rebirth because it does allow you to rinse and repeat this sacrifice ability. And if you have another sacrifice outlet, you're going to get basically 2 ETB effects or cascade effects or whatever card you're targeting with the Safies Daughter. It's also a nice way to protect your commander to turn it back to play and then be able to get those cards back that died. So very, very good card. Again, protecting his board wipes and at least getting some value. So anyway, that's my top 10 list of cards. We'll just run through them one more time. From the honorable mentions, there are a lot of them. I think people will go Liege effects. I wouldn't ignore Cascade. So these ones would be kind of on my watch list. But the other ones, the Safies Daughter for the ability to both protect your cards as well as get maximum value. The Dauntless Escort, the Loxodon Hierarch, the Dragonroodmother, Dragon Arch, Tulsa Wolfblood, Knight of New Lara, IRS Filter, Cazale Pride Mage, and Tome of the Guild Pact. So again, I particularly think that this is a pretty fun commander to build around. And what I like about this is, yes, it has a lack of options, but sometimes that is good for investments because Kaikar is, when I said in the beginning, all over the place. I really mean all over the place. You can justify building that commander pretty degenerately in many different, there are so many cards. You could build a 1,000 card deck and justify the 1,000 cards that go in the deck. This one's a lot harder to find those particular multicolor creatures that also do have value. So I think that all the roads are going to lead to similar cards that I've picked when people actually do go to build this deck. And regardless if it is an insanely popular commander, I think there will be enough people building around this commander and, you know, to stand out from the crowd of people building Kaikar that this will add some demand to the mix. So there you have it. There is my top 10 list of cards that go with the Angel of Rebirth. This is Kevin with the Rogue Market. Thanks for watching.